another hard question. So one of the pitfalls, I suppose, of apocalyptic thinking, and this is true perhaps practically as well as psychologically, is the notion of a runaway positive feedback loop.
Right.
And so, well, the Greenland ice pack melts, and then the currents in the oceans change because of that, especially the warming current that keeps England from not being Arctic. That disappears, and that happens like in 2 weeks, and the whole damn thing freezes, and we're all dead. And so, and runaway positive feedback loops do happen. That's not inconceivable. So how do we know when? How do we deal with that, say practically and psychologically?
Well, let's look at the ice, first of all. So it's the West Antarctic ice shelf that we worry about, or Greenland. So when they worry about losing those ice sheets, it's not in 2 weeks, it's in 700 years to over 1,000 years. That's the period at which they're worried about us losing those ice sheets. So you're talking about an incredibly long period of time. Now, in terms of the Gulf Stream, which is how I initially became apocalyptic about climate change in the late 1990s, was reports that the Gulf Stream would shut down, or that you would stop having the warm air being brought from, the warm water and air being brought from the south to the north. And that was how I originally got fearful of it. Well, the first thing you realize when you read those reports is that to the extent to which there's been changes in the Gulf Stream over history, they've occurred just on their own, like it's just as a natural cycle. So it's not even caused by humans. But there is no evidence that that's being caused by climate change, that we're at some risk of shutting down the Gulf Stream. I just debunked it recently, and some of the reporters it's like a meme that these reporters will repeat every 10 years or so, and they end up trying to confuse people about it. Then so the most recent tipping point study published in Nature as an opinion piece, must have been 2019. I interviewed the lead author of it, and it's just a kind of a bunch of speculation. I mean, this is why IPCC does not include it. That's why it's actually not science. It's not something that they call science or include in their predictions. And I interviewed him about it. He goes, and they had this whole scenario of ice sheets and the Gulf Stream and the Amazon. And I was trying to figure out how it would work exactly. And then he kind of goes, well, he goes, look, the real problem is that at first they thought that there would be that greater warming would bring more rainfall to the Amazon. And then the scientists changed their minds, and now they think it'll bring less. So you have these so-called feedback loops that we don't even understand which direction much of the time they would go in. So, it's not to say that you shouldn't worry. I mean, Bjorn has
okay. So one of the things I always told my clinical clients when they were worried about something was, well, you're hyper worried about that, but you're not worried about a bunch of other things. Like you're hyper worried about taking action, but you're not worried at all about not taking action. It's like, well, there might be a disaster lurking there too. It's like there's this notion, an unexamined notion, that there is some safe route. Right. And so that's generally not the case. And so there is a small probability of an unexpected positive feedback loop, and perhaps that might even be heightened with climate change. Who knows? There's a small probability of that. But then there's also the danger of panicking unnecessarily about hypothetical positive feedback loops and then spending a tremendous amount of money and demolishing things counterproductively. And that, are you so sure that's not a bigger danger? And that's so, right. Yeah. So
you have it just right. So if you take it out of the climate context, you do asteroids, and you go, we should really be spending much more on asteroids. What's the right amount to spend on asteroid detection? Because we could spend a lot more on asteroid detection. Well, you could devote the whole GDP to asteroid detection, and then there might be a supervolcano. And well, we didn't spend all the money on investigating the supervolcanoes. Or the same thing could be said for climate change.
Or an electromagnetic pulse from the sun, which is like a really high probability event, once every 100 years, basically. And one took out the Quebec power grid in like 1986.
Right.
Knocked the whole Northeast out. It's like that could really happen. Yeah. So there are the problem is with apocalypses is they're everywhere. It's like, so, what do we do about that? And that's a hard question. But panicking and producing a panic apocalypse is not a certain panic apocalypse, right? That's not a good answer. I actually worked for a while with a group of astronauts who were attempting to produce this gadget way out in space that would nudge asteroids a tiny fraction of, using a huge metal plate and just deflect them a tiny bit and they would miss the Earth. And it was a very well thought out proposal, but it never, it didn't capture the popular imagination, let's say. So, and that's also one of the things I kind of like about Lomborg's approach too, is he tries to rank order catastrophes in some sense, right? And cost-benefit analysis does have the flaws that you described, but, until we come up with a better method, or I see someone with a better method, I'm pretty attracted to what he's doing. It's practical, and I haven't seen anything better. So, maybe you know of something better.
Yeah, I would just say another positive way to say it is you say, we need to be resilient to many different kinds of catastrophes.
Right.
That means that we need to embrace economic growth and resiliency, because often the things that you're doing are the same things that you would do for a lot of different. So you want to have a robust security system, a robust detection system. You want to have a good scientific and technical class in your country.
Yeah, well, maybe you stop terrifying your young people into depressive neurosis too, because the best way to have a resilient society is to have people who are stalwart in the face of the unknown.